Despite being a primarily anime-focused channel, I do a series analyzing overpowered characters done right, and Sans from Undertale fits that description and then some. Being from a video game that gets way too much hate for a toxic, I hate that word, fanbase, despite being one of the greatest video games, greatest stories, and greatest philosophical and psychological narratives of all time. Even though, obviously, this video will have spoilers, and I therefore don't usually warn you for my analyses, in Undertale, spoilers really matter. So definitely pick up the game for 10 bucks on Steam, do a playthrough, it'll only take like 6 hours, and you can consider this part 2 of my 100,000 subscriber special. Part 1 wasn't for the views, but it was for you guys, and part 2 isn't for the views, but it's for me. This is a passion project. If you enjoy and want more, then hey, sure thing, but Sans is my all-time favorite character from any story, and the ultimate candidate for this series analyzing overpowered characters done right. Thanks for the support, fanbase. Let's do this. There is no correct way to play Undertale, and that's one of the game's strengths, promoting an air of free will and independence, making the outcome all the more potent for the individual player. However, I believe that the way to play Undertale that'll turn out to bring out the best emotional response is to play the demo, kill Toriel, meet Flowey, feel bad you killed Toriel, spare her this time, meet Flowey again, he remembers you reset to save her, and now you feel bad for all the Froggets you've killed in the ruins, so you do a total reset of the game, this time sparing everything, go through it as a pacifist run, cry at the end because the end is amazing, then a genocide for your curiosity, cry at the end because the end was amazing, sell your soul to do another pacifist run to fix everything, and then you realize it's impossible and cry at the end again because it's amazing. Okay? That's how I'll be breaking down the genius of Sans' character by that chronology. Last chance for a spoiler warning, seriously fanbase. Despite the hate for this fandom, this is a pretty amazing game. Okay, you have been warned. Time to cast Sans in a potentially different light than you've ever seen him. But subconsciously, you should already somehow feel that what I'm talking about and what I'm about to say is both tragic and strangely familiar. I am so appreciative to finally make this video. Sans has been on my mind potentially every day since I've played Undertale. That's just because I love a game with deep philosophy, and Undertale's a game that really has that in every single main character, especially in Kara and in Sans. The first time Frisk meets Sans, he unflinchingly recognizes Frisk as a human, in complete contrast to how Toriel just finished telling us how monsters detest mankind. Sans is the first monster met post-demo, and he's immediately an anomaly with no interest in capturing Frisk whatsoever, or in abiding by any form of rules from his world. He treats Frisk like an old companion, despite this seeming like their first meeting, and his sole purpose in the Papyrus arc was seemingly just to make both Frisk happy and Papyrus happy. Sans hid Frisk when he had to, and thanked Frisk for bringing Papyrus joy. Sans gave the air of the ultimate passive-aggressive, kind-hearted goofball character, and to stress that goofiness, every time he'd leave the screen from one direction, he'd appear from the other in the next frame. When there's a serious convo happening, it's as if time stops for everyone else. You know, the kind of thing MatPat would use as a proof that Sans warps the space-time continuum, and Fortnite takes place on Venus, or some well-founded logic like that. But this time, despite seeming like a bad joke, that's exactly the case as we find out way later. Way later. And throughout the game, we bump into Sans constantly in the most random of places, just goofing off. He's like the video game representation of Ethan from H3H3, and it's glorious. We go to the bar with him, we get hot dogs and a volcano, all that fun stuff. Aside from being a boof, there's only the oh-so-slightest lingering suspicion in his character being that he knows of Flowey somehow, something that I guess can be taken for granted as common knowledge, but it's not really mentioned anywhere else, and he also never really seems to do anything throughout the game wherever we see him. He's pretty useless to the grand journey until he takes Frisk to a certain restaurant and he rambles a bit, tells a story that really hits home, and that you know he's implying that he knows Toriel. And then the music is worth a mention. The music is a huge part of this game, with a vast and amazing soundtrack that can convey a broad range of hundreds of emotions, but there's one more powerful than any other. Aside from maybe Megalovania, that's pretty beast. And that powerful track is silence. Silence in Undertale is deafening, bone-chilling, because it's something that should not exist in this universe, even in the most dire of situations. But the music comes to a dead halt, and Sans speaks without that vocal effect that every character has, and with blank eye sockets. That if he didn't make a promise to backhanded Toriel back in the day,
you'd be dead where you stand.
A completely, seemingly out-of-character, terrifying phrase that shattered all expectations of the person we thought we knew. There's something more to our favorite jovial, big-boned skeleton, and exactly that was revealed during our next meeting, in what's now come to be called the Judgment Hall. Sans reveals his role as the arbiter of the underground, and allows you passage to the throne room due to the mercy you displayed in the fact that you haven't even killed a single monster. At least, that's kind of what it looks like. He'd still kill you in a heartbeat if not for that promise he made to Tori, and there's still an unrest because we don't know why. We did everything right, our soul is clean, there's no reason for the ultimate judge to want us dead. Furthermore, he goes as far as to explain that the mechanics of the game, such as saving, loading, LV, and EXP, aren't just devices for the player to experience the tale, but they're real attributes within the fictional universe, and Sans knows about them somehow. LV stands for level of violence, not level, and EXP stands for execution points, not experience points. So Sans judges you for these values you've accumulated over your journey, and still hates you. Not only that, but there's a little secret in the game over here that if after you speak to him, and he allows you passage, you close the game immediately and restart without saving, his conversation with you will be different because he remembers you've already had one. All of a sudden, time travelers are brought up, and it definitely implies that Sans clearly remembers and understands the inner workings and mechanics of the reality of the game you're playing. And that's finally realized and explains many of his funny actions during the story. It doesn't explain his hatred towards humans, but hey, still a 10 out of 10 character, would smash. But this is in my Overpowered analysis series, and his knowledge of the world isn't enough to make me consider him an OP character. But the game is finished with a phenomenal, feels-invoking ending. 10 out of 10 would play again. The only lingering feeling here is curiosity, because there's also this genocide route people are talking about. If this game is played slaughtering every single monster instead of sparing them, apparently there's slightly different nuances in the narrative and a completely novel ending. The different outcome of the Toriel arc was heartbreaking. The changes done in the Papyrus arc, aside from one of the saddest deaths to such a pure heart I've ever experienced, there are also subtle changes, such as Sans pleading with you to not go down this genocide route. It's not too late, and there are little differential outcomes, such as instead of pacifist Sans telling you to hide behind the lamp from his human-hunting brother, he says, no need to hide, you're not a human, you're just another monster. The monsters Frisk killed until this point, if you think about it, they're all in the ruins. There's no way for Sans to know whether you're a pacifist or a megalomaniac. We've established that Sans has supernatural abilities as far as his understanding past the boundaries of the game's lore. And despite killing Sans' brother, who, until the end, believed that not Frisk, but you, the player, can change, Sans does nothing but plead with you at every encounter until his final appearance in the Judgment Hall. Before that, let's backtrack for a moment to point out two brilliant details you gotta have in your subconscious. Firstly, shout out to Undyne for being one of the most epic bosses you'll ever play, and if you guys like this video, maybe I'll do an Overpowered analysis on her. And secondly, Flowey. In the pacifist route, as you head towards the Judgment Hall, monsters from throughout your journey that you've spared return to tell you the tragic tale of the Monster Kingdom and the somber fate of Prince Asriel, which you know because you totally played the game because of my spoiler warning in the beginning. But in the genocide route, those spared monsters were massacred by your own hand, and Flowey, the antagonist of the pacifist route, takes their place to tell a slightly evolved story. Flowey is no longer the antagonist of the genocide route because you, the player, are the antagonist. Flowey somehow possessed determination just as Frisk does, and therefore, Flowey was playing the game, so to speak, over and over, constantly resetting and getting bored of his pacifist routes, and his curiosity of the altered details of his world took over, and he wondered what would happen if he'd kill everyone. Sound familiar? That's exactly what the player's doing right now. It made Flowey callous and lacking emotion, but he never finished his genocide run. He never got to the human world for some strange reason. That reason is inferred to be our old pal that resides in our favorite Judgment Hall. And when we head there, for ourselves, Sans knows of your high amounts of execution points and level of violence, and he says he'll break his promise and challenge you to one of the hardest boss fights you'll ever experience. Here's some YouTubers reacting to how the fight begins.
On days like these, kids like you
should be burning in hell. Oh my fucking god. What the hell?
Aw, balls!
Is this a fight? What?
Okay, I knew it was gonna be hard, but fucking hell! 5 seconds into the battle, really? Come on!
This grueling boss fight will take dozens or more likely hundreds of attempts to memorize his attack patterns and finally defeat, easily qualifying him as an overpowered character. But even more importantly, the first few times he beats you, you're happy inside, because you deserve that justified judgment for the actions you've done, but you're determined to keep fighting him over and over to see what happens next. No matter how many times he crushes you, you won't stop coming and you won't stop coming and you won't stop coming and you won't stop coming. But that's when this fight branches off in two directions. The first is your perspective of the battle, because as you keep losing to Sans, you start feeling disconnected from the emotions you initially felt, knowing that you were wrong. The player's mind is purely set on victory, no longer attaching their actions to the greater narrative, just absorbed in the obstacle before them, so when any player finally lands the finishing blow and experiences the ultimate elation in finally overcoming the most challenging obstacle they've faced, all the emotions of the game's narrative come rushing back, and it becomes one of the most emotional feels trips I've ever experienced. Here's some of the reactions of beating him and the follow-up reactions of his death.
Here comes the money.
Here we go. Money talk.
Here comes the money. Money, money, money.
Dollar, dollar. Dollar, dollar. If you cheat, sling, got the chatter. You ain't talking money, then you're talking no matter. Crap! I still missed. I got him! He's bleeding!
And from Sans' perspective, it makes him an unbelievable, ultimate good guy. He sees every single time the player invokes the reality-breaking power of determination and comes back for another round. Sans counts the times he beats you, and he knows the player will keep on trying. Sans' goal isn't victory because he knows he can't put you down for good, and it isn't even to get your health bar to 0. Sans' only hope for his universe is to break your will, so you won't be determined enough to get back up and face him again. That's why he fights his hardest every time for all of his eternity, living through his eternal hell, battling first Flowey, where he succeeded to break his will, and now against you, forever. Suffering at the whim of your timeline-distorting power where he won't allow you to spare him by any cost. He'll dunk on you, getting the chance. Locked in this eternal bloodshed, the only way he can be defeated is when his fatigued state of mind is overwhelmed, when you attack him on his own term, causing the most tragic death of the most righteous good guy possible, and that's the perfect overpowered character. And it goes deeper yet. I'm not going into the Gaster connection because it doesn't really fit into this video analyzing brilliant powerhouses, but his most powerful unspoken detail lies in the difference between loading your file and resetting your file. In the game, he straight out talks to you and judges you based on your actions within your current file, just clearly counting loaded attempts, implying that the depth of his knowledge is just as far as your saving and loading goes. And that's pretty obvious, right? I mean, if he can also see entire other reset files and timelines, he'd hate you even in the pacifist route, right? Right. Remember the
You'd be dead where you stand.
He does hate you, but he lets you live because, aside from being purposeless to kill you, he has an oath that he doesn't feel like breaking. He detests you because he's lived the countless timelines watching all his friends die by your hand over and over. But then, true pacifist is attained once again. All the monsters leave the underground and finally can see the sun for the first time. And they disperse, one at a time, all going in several directions. But Sans takes a different path from the rest of them entirely. In one of the final frames of the game, Sans heads right back underground. The straightforward reasoning is just his goofy teleportation thing again. He'll leave one frame and appear from the other, but he said things in his genocide fight that kinda line up with this certain action being something else. He said it wasn't too late to get rid of the sins crawling on your back. In other words, resetting from the beginning, but he's also mentioned that leaving the underground has no further appeal to him. He wants the reset. He wants his monster friends to enjoy their lives and explore the outside world and be free of their shackles. But to him, personally, it makes no difference. Because after a true pacifist route is complete, nice, we got to the happy ending. Let's start a new game, because this was super fun. And for poor Sans, he's starting his endless cycle once again, to go through the same motions for the millionth time, or watch his friends get slaughtered before his eyes over and over. But Sans is willing to live through it all and put up a fight in the genocide routes, so at least his ultimate selfless actions can benefit the rest of monster kind. In his world, Sans is nigh omnipotent in knowledge and power, but he's also completely and utterly helpless to his own fate, and will still bar the path at the end of every genocide route where you will fight him to win, fighting for his friends only to be thrown back in his tumultuous eternal fate, even if pacifist is attained. And that's an overpowered character done right. That's what makes a character's struggle and life feel real, and that's why Sans is my favorite character from any story of all time. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you at least had some semblance of enjoyment from this video, even though it wasn't anime. Thanks so much, fanbase, for 100,000 subscribers. It means so much to me. I hope this passion project of mine was cool by you. Believe it or not, I only scratched the surface of the depths of Sans' character, only touching on the OP done right aspects. I could make this video quadruple the length if I talked about his connection to Gaster, as well as his philosophy that applies to all of us, especially because he essentially feels crushing futility, but continues to power on regardless. Undertale's an incredible experience, regardless of the hate it gets, and if you do actually want more Undertale content, you may as well let me know. As well as covering OP characters from other media, feel free to subscribble for more analysis and satire, mostly anime content. Love you guys, really. 100,000 subs is incredible for a wacko like me, but it still really means the world to me. Stay weird, fam.